This week, I have something special for you, a trilogy, if you will, in 3 acts. And it's all about Microsoft, one of the biggest and most successful companies on the planet, but also one of the worst when it comes to product marketing. Microsoft is notorious for developing or launching products that fail, often because they build products without determining if there's even a need for them, which violates one of the most basic principles of product marketing. In 2024 alone, Microsoft discontinued the Surface Duo 2 smartphone line, the Surface Studio 2 Plus PC, the Windows Mixed Reality project, the HoloLens 2 project, and the Paint 3D app, which was supposed to replace the old Paint application in Windows. And in 2023, they killed off the Cortana AI assistant. All of these are products Microsoft made a big deal about at one time, but they're all products that didn't really reflect a need. They were tech Microsoft developed in hopes that the public would be excited about them, and yeah, they weren't. They've gone the route of other major misfires like the Windows Phone, Groove Music, Microsoft Band, and of course, Microsoft Bob. Every now and then, Microsoft beats the odds and creates something truly special, but it doesn't happen often. So about 20 years ago, Microsoft announced a brand new product that was going to compete with one of the biggest electronic brands on the planet. And it was kind of out of nowhere, too, because Microsoft was known for being a software company, not a product company. This new product was going to have all the features of this other super popular product, but it would be bigger, faster, more powerful, and able to do a lot more things. I was a video game store manager at the time, and I got my first glimpse of this thing at our fall managers conference because our video game store was going to be one of the main sales channels through which you could find this particular product. And Microsoft's rep told us this was something to be excited about. It was going to be a big deal. They were even launching it during the holiday window to maximize sales, and they were pretty sure they were going to be able to put a big dent in Apple's market share. Oh, wait, did you expect me to say Sony or maybe Nintendo? I wasn't talking about the Xbox. We'll get to that in another episode. I was talking about this other device Microsoft decided to launch that was meant to compete with Apple's runaway success with the iPod. It was a portable music player called the Zune. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you it didn't exactly set the world on fire. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. Beyond a few gadget nerds who were interested in the fact that the Zune could play videos or tune in FM radio, 2 features the iPod didn't have, it really didn't have a strong appeal as a product. It was uglier. It was bigger, it was clunkier, and it wasn't any cheaper. So why would anybody want to buy one? Microsoft didn't have a good answer for that. And even after they reconfigured the Zune to look more like an iPod, and they even got tech reviewers to say, this is actually a better device for listening to music than the iPod, people still didn't want it. Microsoft discontinued it, and the Zune went down in history as one of those famous product failures you read about in textbooks. And why shouldn't it? It's a great cautionary tale about how big companies often fail when they step out of their area of expertise and try something new. Microsoft was good at making office productivity software and operating systems. Why in the world did they think they could get into digital music, though? It seems absolutely crazy until you consider that they were just copying one of their competitors. And of course, as a company you've definitely heard of, and that company is Apple. But first, a little bit of context. Today, we associate Apple with the iPhone, but in the 1990s, Apple wasn't a huge consumer electronics company. Not really the way they are today, anyway. Besides a few misfires like the Apple Newton PDA device and the Apple Pippin Games console, Apple really just made a computer that only a fraction of the people who use computers even wanted to own. So when Apple announced the iPod in 2001 with the pitch that it could put 1,000 songs in your pocket, a lot of people didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. Apple wasn't the only company trying to sell a digital music player, and it was hard for a lot of people to imagine anybody but hardcore computer users even buying one, because it meant you first had to copy music from a compact disc to your Macintosh computer through iTunes, then connect your iPod, and then copy the music onto the device again. And while the Macintosh had its fans, it was still just a tiny fraction of the total number of computer users. And if all Apple had done was focus on the idea of selling a cool gadget to its existing customers, the iPod probably wouldn't be a household name today. But of course, Apple didn't stop there. And the reason was that their CEO at the time, Steve Jobs, was a master marketer. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, most people who were serious about music had large collections of compact discs that they carry around in these big books to house their music collections. CDs were way more convenient than cassette tapes because they didn't wear out and you could skip around on them more easily. But they were also easy to scratch and they were common targets for thieves. And unless you had the ability to burn your own custom CDs using your computer, you had to switch CDs if you didn't want to listen to an entire album. So Steve Jobs realized that the appeal of the iPod wasn't in copying music from your computer, but instead having this little device you could carry around that contained your entire music collection. Owning an iPod meant you could enjoy your music on your own terms, whenever you wanted. It meant freedom. And if you go back and watch the very famous iTunes commercials from that era, you'll recognize that freedom is exactly what Apple was selling. They even managed to make it look cool in the process. But one additional thing Steve Jobs recognized was that this freedom also meant not having to buy an entire $15 to $20 album just to get your hands on a song you really liked. And so he went to 5 major record labels and convinced them to try something new, selling individual songs, not albums, to iTunes users at 99 cents a pop. When the iTunes Store launched in 2003, it caught on quick among early adopters and sold 1 million music tracks in its first 5 days. But it wasn't until it was released for Microsoft Windows later that year that it really caught fire. By the end of 2003, iTunes had sold over 25 million tracks. Just 3 months later, they'd sold over 50 million. iTunes went on to be the most popular platform for digital music for the next decade. But what you have to understand is Apple would have never had that success without Microsoft's users. And that was why Microsoft decided to create their own copycat with the Zune. They clearly thought that by releasing their own device, they could capture some of the interest in buying a portable music player. They even had their own dedicated software and Zune music store, just like Apple did. But here's the difference between Apple and Microsoft. Apple has historically been very, very good at marketing, especially during the years Steve Jobs was leading the company. Microsoft has never been good at it. And just copying Apple's strategy was never going to work for Microsoft because they never bothered to ask, why would anyone want to buy this product from us instead of from Apple? Instead, they just assumed people would. And I can see the business logic behind that to some degree, because Microsoft probably thought people were thinking about their digital music players the same way they thought about mice and keyboards and speakers, as an extension of their computer. But what Microsoft missed is that Apple's iPod wasn't just some computer accessory with cool branding and a catchy name. It was a lifestyle device that allowed people to get away from their computers and stereos and binders full of CDs and integrate their music into their lives. Surprisingly, Microsoft did have some experience in lifestyle products. In fact, they had launched one the year before the Zune debuted, and it was already selling like crazy. You know, in that same video game store where I had Zunes sitting on the shelf unsold, I couldn't keep this other product in stock. It wound up selling 84 million units over its lifetime, and it's still well regarded even today. I'm talking, of course, about the Xbox 360, Microsoft's most successful video game console to date. And I'll tell you its story on the next episode. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been The Marketing Gateway. See you next time. Since we're talking about music in this episode, today's plug is for live music. And I don't mean going to big arena shows or watching recordings of live performances. I mean getting out there and finding some musicians who are performing live music someplace, like a piano bar or a small concert venue or even a street corner if you have to. You know, one of my biggest concerns about art and culture today is we turn music into this product that you listen to through a service instead of treating it as one of the most universal and important forms of human artistic expression. Music is about far more than just listening to the same old recordings over and over. It's about forming a connection with other people in the room and allowing the rhythm and the melody to affect your pulse and your heartbeat and even your breathing as you get lost in the sound. And if you haven't had the ability or opportunity to go and hear some live music recently, this is a great time of year to do it. Many communities have holiday concerts, productions of the Nutcracker, and fall festivals where you can hear music, and even better, a lot of those opportunities are inexpensive or even free. So take some time to listen to some live music. You'll be glad you did.